So today's webinar will be in English. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. It's a pleasure to collaborate again with our member FI group in the organization of today's meeting. Today, we will be focusing on sustainability. Sustainability is a word that we often hear and every day more and more, but we don't often understand the extent of the meaning. And it's a key to a better future. Sustainability improves the quality of our lives, protects our ecosystem, and preserves natural resources for future generations. In the corporate world, sustainability is associated with an organization's holistic approach, taking into account everything from manufacturing to logistics to customer service. And going green and sustainable is not only beneficial for the company, but it also maximizes the benefits from an environmental focus in the long term. In today's webinar, we will explore the opportunities contained in the Italian recovery plan, Italia Domani, which aims to create a more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth. We will focus on renewable energy and circular economy, energy requalification, hydrogen, and sustainable mobility, especially. Who better to talk to us through the importance of this topic than to hear directly from Mónica Oviedo Cáspedes, that is the head of sustainability of Iberdrola, which will share with us an example of corporate best practice on the theme of environmental social responsibility and UN 2030 agenda. I'm sure most of you know Iberdrola, but just to remind you, Iberdrola is leader in the production, distribution, and marketing of electricity and natural gas in the Spanish market. I will now introduce today's speaker. We will have Paola Capello, EU and National Grants Division Manager at FI Group, and Mónica Oviedo Cáspedes, Head of Sustainability at Iberdrola. So once again, I would like to thank FI Group, Mónica from Iberdrola, and all the participants for attending today's webinar. I remind you to please keep your microphones on mute, and if you have any questions, you can write your questions throughout the webinar in the chat. We will try to answer them as soon as possible, and nevertheless, at the end of the webinar, there will be a 10 minutes will be reserved for a Q&A session, during which we'll try to answer to all your questions. So thank you very much, Paola and Mónica. Welcome, and please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks, Yolanda, for the introduction. I am honored to kickstart this webinar. We have FI Group Italia has been collaborating with the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in a series of matters, and in particular for the information regarding the Italian recovery and resilience plan. As Yolanda correctly said, sustainability is key not only for our planet, but also for enterprises, because if you adhere to these sustainable goals and way of producing, behaving, and also having relations with clients and suppliers, enterprises can become more competitive and so gain bigger slices of the market shares. Today's presentation will be about what the Italian recovery plan foresees for sustainability. So we will go deep into mission 2, which is actually the heart of our recovery plan for what regards sustainability. I will now share the PowerPoint I have prepared, so to have some backup support, because the Italian recovery plan is a very complicated document, as all the recovery plans that each member state had to submit to the European Commission in order to get these famous next-gen funds, which are actually some of different funding sources, which all aim to create a more digitalized, green and resilient Europe for the coming years. I will shortly introduce myself. My name is Paola Capello. I am the UN National Grants Division Manager in FI Group Italia, which is actually a branch of a multinational consultancy firm dealing with mainly R&D, tax incentives and calls. Before going into details, I would like to distinguish the words that we will use today and that you always hear from in the newspapers and in the articles. So what exactly do we mean by green revolution and ecological transition, which is actually also the naming, the title of the mission 2 in the framework of the Italian recovery plan. So green revolution has to do with the agricultural production. So thanks to the introduction of new technologies, new approaches and new ways of cultivating the fields, agriculture will be greener and at the same time more productive. Ecological transition has to do with everything related to the production and the delivery of both goods and services, which have to respect certain criteria in order to meet the environmental targets. You all know that the Italian recovery plan is made up of 6 missions. The focus today will be mission 2 only, because this is the one which is focused 100% on sustainability, generally speaking. There are some more investments regarding sustainability also in mission 3, infrastructures for sustainable mobility, which is somehow complementary to mission 1. But in today's webinar, we will only focus on mission 2, which is worth almost 60 billion in our recovery plan. Beware that altogether 37% of the funds in the Italian recovery plan are allocated to climate objectives. We can group the lines of investments into 4 groups or components are called in the Italian recovery plan. The first line of investment has to do with circular economy and sustainable agriculture. The second line of investment is related to renewable energy and sustainable mobility. The third line is related to energy efficiency and renovation of buildings. And the last is related to protection of land and water resources. So this is the scheme of our recovery plan. So as stated before, we will focus on the second mission only, green revolution and ecological transition. Before explaining in more details what is foreseen in Italia Domani, I wanted to show you this graph, which is very self-explaining in my opinion, because it shows how many million of euros and how many projects are expected in the coming years till 2026, which is the year by when all projects will have to be completed. As you see, last year and this year, there weren't so many projects, if we can say so, because Italy only got a first disbursement from the European Commission at the beginning of August. And so basically, in order to spend immediately the money got from Brussels, the Italian government decided to focus on already existing and ongoing initiatives, and only a little slice of the cake was for brand new projects, which took some time before going into the implementation phase. So for the coming years, and specifically 2022, 2023, and 2024, we expect an increase in the billions spent, corresponding to a higher number of projects that will have to be implemented in Italy. So now let's go back to the focus of this speech, which is Mission 2 Italian Recovery Plan. It is composed of 4 components. I will detail the investments hereafter in the coming slides. And when there are already calls for proposal open or some important updates, of course, I will describe them in more details. Beware that up till now and till the end of the year, the Italian government is still very much concerned and involved in the finalization of some important reforms and implementation decrees and acts, which will be fundamental for the deployment of all the numerous investment lines. So we expect a growth in the publication of tenders and calls for proposal starting from beginning of next year. So be ready. This is the right time to know where the opportunities are and to prepare some winning proposals. The Mission 2 Component 1, dealing with circular economy and sustainable agriculture, is divided into 3 areas of intervention. Basically, the first one has to do with waste management facilities. The second one foresees interventions for the agricultural system. And the third area is related to what we called in Italian integrated projects. So these are somehow projects related to a very small island, so green islands, which should become independent from an energy production point of view. While when we talk about green communities, again, are small ecosystems located in mountain areas or in rural areas where there is a sort of integration between the agro-food, the agricultural system, the natural heritage, and also the production of energy efficiency from renewable sources. As far as the investment 1.1 is concerned, it is related to the both construction and renovation of waste management plans for numerous materials, which I will describe later on, because for this investment and also for the investment 1.2 circular economy flagship projects, calls for proposal were already published at the in mid-October, as you can see from this slide. So what happened? The Italian MITE, that is to say the Ministry for Ecological Transition, launched several types of calls for proposal, mainly addressed to public beneficiaries, and in particular regions, municipalities, and provinces, for doing the following things. So modernization and construction of new treatment, recycling, and logistic facilities for urban waste from separate collection, electrical and electronic equipment, including wind turbine blades and photovoltaic panels, paper and cardboard waste, and absorbent materials for personal usage, sewage sludge, leather waste, sorry, and textile waste. There is also another group of calls for proposal, which are dedicated to the infrastructure for the collection of pre-consumer and post-consumer textile fractions, modernization of facilities and constructions of new recycling plants for textile fraction with a systemic approach. Another group of calls for proposal is aimed at improving and making it more mechanized, the network and the fleets for collecting urban waste. So the opening date was as I said, mid-October. The closing date will be mid-February 2022. In the coming days, all the details and also the platform for uploading the calls for proposal will be available directly on the Ministry for Ecological Transition website. Always within the component 1, circular economy and sustainable agriculture, we have another group of investments which are related to the part related to sustainable agriculture. The first investment is related to the logistics in the agricultural sector, which has to be improved in order to save time and money. It is foreseen, sorry. It is also foreseen a dedicated investment for building photovoltaic parks and installations directly on the roofs of the buildings in the agricultural landscape. So to produce directly energy where it is used, and we know that in agriculture lots of energy is consumed. Another investment I mentioned before has to deal with these green communities. In total, the National Recovery Plan foresees the financing of 30 green communities, both in the mountains as well as in rural areas, and the aim is to set up some integrated projects dealing with both the management of agroforestry heritage, the water resources management, and the production of energy from renewable sources. The second component of Mission 2 is called renewable energy, hydrogen network, and sustainable mobility. And this is the biggest component in Mission 2. It is made up of 5 areas of investment. And it has to do with the production of energy from renewable sources, the upgrading and digitalization of the network infrastructures, the promotion of hydrogen, both starting from production till its distribution and the numerous end uses hydrogen can have. In the 2 last areas of intervention, the recovery plan foresees investments for developing a more sustainable local transport, so also promoting cycling paths, but also rapid mass transport, new bus fleets, and so on and so forth. In order to allow all these investments, it is also of utmost importance to develop an international industrial leadership in some key aspects, and in particular in the renewable sector, the batteries, the hydrogen, and also the electric buses. Going into more details as per regards the investments I have just mentioned, here are some more pieces of information regarding the numerous investments. So, for example, talking about this investment 1.1, which is called agrovoltaic development. This investment aims at producing 1,04 gigawatts either on fields or on water surfaces, like imagine some lakes in the country yards. it aims the second investment aims at producing energy, aims at the production of energy exactly where it is used. That is to say, on site. With this investment, Italy aims at setting up around 2,000 megawatt of new electricity generation capacity in distributed configuration. For also improving the production of energy from renewable resources, there is also an investment dedicated to offshore facilities, and also the biomethane production will be boosted thanks to new and refurbished plants where to convert organic waste into biomethane, which can then be used both in residential and public buildings, but also for transportations. To complement these investments, it is also important to mention that the smart grid has to be reinforced with the aim of reaching around 1,800,000 users who will therefore have a greater connection capacity. Some more investments related to hydrogen, just to make some examples, is the usage of hydrogen in the sectors which are called hard to abate. So sectors in which lots of energy is used, and we can think of using hydrogen to substitute the current ways of getting the energy. And we are talking about the cement, basically the steel, glass, and paper sectors. As far as the deployment and the spread of electric vehicles, the Italian recovery plan foresees the setting up of 7,500 fast charging points in motorways and more than 13,000 in urban centers. So to allow for the recharging of electric vehicles. Always, as regards the sustainable mobility, we have some more investments which are related to the renewal of bus fleets and green trains. So to have new means of transport that pollute less. Then there will be also an investment dedicated to renewables and batteries, so to strengthen the capacity of producing the components and the elements which are fundamental for producing renewable energy from renewable energies as well as batteries. Last but not least, a dedicated Green Transition Fund will support startups and venture capital active in the ecological transition. As far as the state of the art is concerned, I wanted here to give you some updates. So basically, beginning of November, the so-called infrastructure decree was approved. This is very useful, so to simplify the rules for the administration in charge of the interventions. On November the 9th, also there was an agreement of the state regions. There was a decree signed by our Minister for Infrastructure and Sustainable Mobility for implementing and allocating 836 million euros for the development of regional railways. So we are somehow proceeding with the substitution of old fleet as well as the renewal of the infrastructure, the railway infrastructure. Let's move now to the third component of mission 2, which has to deal with the energy efficiency and renovation of buildings. This is really a big slice in our recovery plan, and the interventions are related to tax deduction schemes like the eco bonus and sisma bonus, which is actually the seismic tax deduction. And also district heating. This will be the three pillars of the redevelopment policy for both public and private buildings. The measures are aimed at encouraging building renovation and the replacement of obsolete and polluting systems. As a matter of fact, Italian buildings account for more than a third of Italy's energy consumption, and most of them were built before the adoption of energy saving criteria. So again, lots of investments and billions are allocated to this energy efficiency and renovation of buildings. The buildings mentioned in the Italian recovery plan are both social housing, judiciary buildings, as well as schools and hospitals. So really a broad number of buildings and also residential. While renovating the buildings, enterprises are also asked to make them really part of the community, of the society. So more sustainable, not only from an energy consumption point of view, but also from a societal point of view. As far as regards the investment 1.1 in the framework of component 2, here we talk about the school building replacement and energy rehabilitation plan. So most of schools will have to be renewed in order to increase their safety in case of earthquake, and to design them in a better way so that they are really like an environment which is open to families and students for learning better. Then there is another investment which is dedicated to this judiciary buildings, so the court buildings, and the famous eco bonus and sisma bonus schemes, which are actually a specific tax deduction scheme already in place, and that which will go on till 2024, which is for both private social housing and public buildings. The other investment has to do with the development of district heating systems. So the target set is the development of 330 kilometers of efficient district heating networks and the construction of plants or connections for the recovery of waste heat for 360 megawatt. Now we go on to the last component of the recovery plan. So we have talked about circular economy and sustainable agriculture in component 1. We have talked about the production of energy using renewable sources. We dealt with the energy efficiency and renovation in buildings. And now to close the panorama of the different investments, we talk about the protection of the territory and water resources. So it's important, first of all, to being able to monitor and implement forecasting systems, so to know in advance what will happen, and so to adapt maybe some measure to reduce the damages. There will also be another areas of intervention for preventing and counteracting the effects of climate change in the hydrogeological instability and the vulnerability of the territory. This is particularly true for Italy, because when it rains, sometimes water really makes some disaster. It's another area of intervention will be related to air quality and the preservation of biodiversity, both in national parks, but also around the River Po area, which crosses the north part of Italy. The renovation and remediation of orphan sites, so sites which were very, very polluted and then abandoned, and that nowadays nobody uses anymore. And also the preservation of the biodiversity and nature in seabed and marine habitats. Another group of investment has to do with the management of water resources. Also the investment in primary water infrastructure, the reducing leakages in water distributed networks, investments in the resilience of the irrigation agrosystem, and so on and so forth. Now some more details regarding some investments I deemed more interesting for you, and I will share with you is the investment 1.1, which I mentioned before. So it's important to developing a monitoring system to identify and predict the risks, so to be better, so to allow a better planning. Sorry. So at the end of September, there was a decree approving the operational plan for the implementation of the advanced and integrating monitoring system. So little by little, we are moving towards the launching of the calls foreseen for the investment 1.1. Investment 2.1 it's against the flood risk management. And here are again some more investments. I will go through the slides quite quickly because we are running out of time, and I want to leave the floor to the testimonial Iberdrola. So actually, just what is going slow and what we shall expect. So basically, at the Ministry of Ecological Transition, it remains to complete by the end of the year the package of reforms, which I mentioned at the beginning of my speech. So reforms are key to the correct implementation of the investments, and reforms are the second pillar of the recovery plan besides investments. In particular, there have to be reforms for biomethane and biogas. There are some agreements for the agrivoltaic, and last but not least, we are still waiting for the establishment of the National Integrated Energy and Climate Plan technical commissions. At the end of my slides, you see the timeline for this year and next year for the investments related to Mission 2 and the different ministries which are in charge of the launching of the cost for proposal. Thank you for your attention. I remain at your disposal for further questions. I now leave the floor to Iberdrola, Mónica, and her colleague. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paola. Thank you for the presentation and for your super comprehensive state of art, and thank you for the invitation to be here. I'm Mónica Oviedo, responsible for sustainability management and 2030 agenda within the group. and I will be covering how we have integrated the 2030 agenda within our strategy and how it's linked. What Paola has been mentioned, that for sure that in Spain has followed a very parallel job. So we will have a quick view of what we have done in the last 6 years from the approval of the 2030 agenda. So Beatrice, I don't know if we can go ahead, and we have 2 slides to cover Iberdrola, how we have changed from in the last 20 years, because we were a traditional local utility, and we have completely diversify our activities. And as you can see in this graph, now we have 50% of our EBITDA in euros and in pounds, so in Europe, and the rest of our EBITDA is global, is abroad, mainly in United States and Brazil and Mexico. So we have also changed, and we can go to the following one, where we have set our strategic vision, and we have these 3 main lines of activity. The power decarbonization is a priority for us, and because of that, we are investing in clean technologies. We are also investing, and our plans for the near future is working the network system integration. And on the other hand, the 3rd line would be the demand electrification. So here we can find transport, building, industry, heat pumps, electric vehicles, and green hydrogen. These are key innovative areas where we are focusing. And I will present, and I will have one of my colleagues help, because he will be joining to explain what we are doing in the smart mobility, in the mobility field, in order to give you some concrete examples of what we are doing in Iberdrola. So in the following slide, we will detail in the main aspects of the 2030 agenda. So we can jump to number 5, where you for sure know the big change of the new actors. The private sector has become a new actor in this participative process, and not just public or 3rd sector, but private sector is considered very key in achieving the 17 goals that are included in the 2030 agenda. So we think that it's very aligned with the priorities that Paola has been presented, and for us, this 2030 agenda is a very comprehensive strategic plan for all the countries and companies. And I would like to mention what we have done in order to increase our contribution, what we have done in these last 6 years since the approval of the 2030 agenda in September 2015. So we will present what we have done through the SDG Compass. These are the 5 steps that we have followed and are recommended by the SDG Compass in order to increase the private sector contribution to the 2030 agenda. So these are the 5 steps. First one, understanding the SDGs and avoid this rainbow washing that I will mention afterwards. Defining priorities could be the 2nd step. Number 3 is setting goals, and this is something that we find very relevant, and I will be explaining what we have done in this field. Integrating in the agenda would be the 4th step, and last but not least, the reporting and communicating job that's very relevant for increasing our contribution to the agenda. So we can start with the first one. In the following slide, we will have what we have done in order to understand the SDGs and some of our priorities. for electric company, for our sector, we have to look at energy for two perspectives. We have to look at sustainability from the energetic perspective, where we will monitor three areas that have to be reinforced. This is competitiveness, security in energy supply, and environment. These are the three lines that we have to cover when we take a decision that has to be sustainable in the energy field. And on the other hand, we have to take the three aspects of the business sustainability. In order to be sustainable, we have to take into account environment for sure, the creation of value, the economic perspective, and the social dimension. So as you can see, we have these 5 drivers that are beneath all our activities, all of our strategy. This is the sustainable development policy that Iberdrola Board of Directors approved in the year 2014. And with this approval, we have this sustainability scorecard that we are following, and we are measuring, and we are contrasting with the context that we have in the countries that we are present. And with the approval of the agenda, you can see that we included here the impact that we have in every driver in the SDGs. And what happened, that we felt that we were covering the 17 SDGs. And this was at the beginning our narrative, but we didn't. So we felt that we were covering all the SDGs, and we don't feel comfortable, because that could be like business as usual and calling it as you are working with the agenda. And as Paola has expressed, we need very innovative actions in order to achieve the 2030 agenda. And that's why, and we can go to the following slide, where we created a SDG chair with a European, with the Universidad Politécnica Madrid, and we created this chair because, as I mentioned, we were new in this process, and we wanted to bring together university and private sector in order to address the sustainable development goals. So that was some of our first steps in order to understand the SDGs and to internalize within the company. And that's why we launched a trainee for directors, for top directors, to check the opportunities that 2030 agenda brings with it. In the following slide, you can see one of our priorities, because the second step of the SDG compass is focused on defining priorities. And we had it very clear that for us, number 7 and number 13 were priorities for the company, and were the areas where we can make substantial contribution and innovative transformation. And I think it's important for you to do this exercise of selecting which are your areas where you can make this transformative change. And we selected number 7, clean energy and climate change, and I will explain what we have done in this field. In the following slide, you can see that the setting goals, and we have SDG number 7 has 3 lines. The line of energy access, the second line is the renewable energy increase, and the third line will be the energy efficiency. So I think it's important that for you to know that we have set goals in these 3 areas, and these targets are linked to directors' retribution. I think this is one of our best practices that I would like to mention, because I think it's important to set these ambitious targets and linked with the retribution, the remuneration of our directors. In the following slides, I have included what we are doing in the energy access field, and I think we can jump, because it's focused on energy access in countries that are not covered by the European 8. So we can go to the following slide where you can see what we have done in the renewable energy. In the renewable energy, we have increased a lot in the last years, but what I wanted to mention, and very linked with Paola's presentation, is that we have ambitious targets in order to increase in the following years 28 gigawatts in the year 25, but we will be arriving until 90 gigawatts of capacity, renewable capacity installed in the year 2030. So I think it's very relevant to have all these regulation to be aligned, and to as you can see here, we want to increase our capacity. On the third line would be the energy efficiency, and I want to give the floor to my colleague in order to present you what we have done, because here you have the picture of our view in the residential area and in the industrial area. What are our solutions that we are giving for the electrification of the residential area? And we have to increase. It's a huge opportunity that also Paola has been mentioning about the smart solar, the smart climate that we have in our market, and also in the industrial view. But it's important to select what we are doing in a smart mobility. So I don't know, Carlos, if you are here with us now, and we can jump to the following slides to present. Thank you, Carlos.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Mónica. Yes, within the framework and the portfolio of all smart solutions, we are in the area of smart mobility, and in that context, I would like to say that Spain has a very outstanding conditions to integrate electric vehicle into the system, because our electrical system is among the best-in-class systems in the world, and together with other countries like Italy, for instance, and also Sweden, we have a system that is very well prepared to integrate the electric vehicle and to have smart charging infrastructures, and also to provide services like vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, because in that sense the system helps a lot to make this integration of new services related to electric vehicles. And within smart mobility, we are making mainly three main efforts. One, we want to accelerate the electromobility, the electrification of transport, by investing money in the infrastructures and in the business. Also, we try to focus on the fast and ultra-fast recharge infrastructure. And finally, we think that one of the main contributions is to cooperate with the ecosystem, and mainly with car manufacturers, to make possible the arrival of the new electromobility ecosystem and solutions. That's why next slide, please. That's why we are more focused not only in the infrastructure, but mainly in the solutions, and we provide adapted and integral solutions to the main segments of electromobility users. One, so we have the area of B2C, where we provide adapted solutions for homes, for users that charge their cars at home. Also a B2B segment where we are specializing solutions for companies, mainly for those companies that have fleets, electric vehicle fleets. Also, of course, we develop a public charging infrastructure, as I have said, you mainly focused on fast and ultra-fast charging. And finally, we have an area focused on urban mobility, where we provide solutions for cities, mainly for electric buses and for charging these electric buses. Next, please. In that sense, as I think has already been mentioned, we are within a scheme for investing 150 million euros in the next few years, and we will then develop a total amount of 150,000 charging points in Spain. We are committed to develop to install at least one point of 50 kilowatts every 50 kilometers, at least one of 150 kilowatts every 100 kilometers, and finally at least one of 350 kilowatts every 200 kilometers. So this is the plan that we are involved in, and in that moment we have installed more than 1,300 charging points, though we also have more than 2,000 charging points being developed in different stages of the licensing process of the charging point. So this is a huge plan, but as I have said you, one of our pillars is the cooperation with the industry, and that's why we have agreements with almost every OEM in Spain, and also in international scope with other groups. So, and we cooperate with OEMs, but also with petrol station companies to install, and with the third sector to install charging points in supermarkets and in the towns, and all parkings where the electromobility drivers can charge. And that's our plan. Thank you for listening, and I give back the floor to Mónica.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you for your explanation and this case that we wanted to introduce you, because I think it's important to go to the reality of the activities that we have in the strategy, and from the corporate perspective, but we can go to the activity that the business are developing. So if you remember, we were talking about number 7, the SDG number 7, but number 13 is other of our priorities, and that's why we have these specific targets in order to have this carbon neutrality in the year 2050, and our targets for scope 1, 2, and 3 have been approved by Science Based Targets initiative. So this is an area where we are working very hard. In the following slides, you can check which are our priorities and our targets and our trend for the future, and we will be decreasing our intensity of CO2 emissions in the near future. And we can go to the following slide, because I see that the time flies, and we are integrating, as I mentioned. I think it's important from this slide to check that the corporate governance system has been approved, and this reform, it's including the 2030 agenda within our bylaws. And I think it's important that the social dividend has been included in our annual general meetings, not just economic dividend, but also social dividend that we are giving to our shareholders. And to conclude, you can check in the following slides that we have included in our outlooks these main ESG targets, and that we will be achieving in the medium and long term. And we can jump to the last slide, because this is how we are contributing to the communication of the agenda. And the last one is that is the message that we want to finish with, is that the SDGs could be a communication tool, and we have heard that they are a very good language, but for us they are the driver and the compass for exiting in the crisis. So I think it's important for you to go and to internalize this 2030 agenda, and to go ahead to select your own targets and your contribution to the agenda. thank you for your time, and I finish here this job that we have been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mónica. Thank you, Paola, and thank you, Carlos, for your intervention. It's definitely very interesting and very helpful. In terms of Paola, it's impossible to understand all the funds available and how to access them in the correct way. So it's been very important to have your input, and then in terms of Iberdrola, it's very interesting to see how the investments, the actions, and the commitments that you're carrying out to reach your targets. So, given that it's already 1 o'clock, we'll pass to the Q&A. I see that there are no comments or questions in the chat, which means you're all being very, very clear with your Maybe we can just open the microphone just in case there is a question that anyone wants to make. Okay, if I have been sent a question. Okay, so I'll from one of the participants, and this question is to Paola. Paola, how can firms benefit in practice of the opportunities related to the National Recovery and Resilience Plan?
Yes, thanks for the question. Actually, there are basically 2 ways. There are some calls for proposal launched by the ministries, which are the owners of the investments, if we can call them so. And these calls for proposals are open also to private for-profit actors, so enterprises. There is a second way of participating and benefiting from the opportunities, which is somehow indirect. So the public administration, let's say regions or municipalities, which will be given the money, will themselves open some tenders open to companies for instance, the provision of some services or some products. So this is a way of indirectly benefiting from the funds. But my suggestion is to monitor also our website when we publish all the summaries of the most interesting calls. And if you have any doubts or questions, just feel free to ask.
Absolutely, Paola. And maybe you mentioned earlier, but just to remind everyone, where are the calls of proposals published? I mean, your website plus, but
yes, and also the Italian government published a dedicated subsection on the Italia Domani website, which is called Bandi and Avvisi, so calls for proposals and tenders. There is a resume of all the calls actually currently available. I always suggest to double check on each single ministry website.
Okay. Okay, perfect. If you ever, find, or maybe sometimes we can maybe send some of these links to some of the participants today, maybe just so that they get help them one of the first times to navigate through the websites.
Yeah. I will contact Beatrice this afternoon from your staff so that we can align on the specific communication. No problem.
Perfect. Thank you, Paola. And then to Mónica. Mónica, where do you see the biggest challenges to reach your 2030 agenda? I mean, because it's quite so challenging now that it means a lot of commitment.
Thank you for the question. Yes, we have seen that with the COVID crisis, sustainability issue has not lost any relevance in our strategy, and we feel that it's something that has to be reinforced for a public perspective. And I think it's important that the main challenge is that the main CEOs and directors for the private sector and for the public institutions to really trust on this role of the sustainability, and not to set aside as a okay, and then we can speak about sustainability as something like that it's from the communication perspective. I think it's something that has to be in the NDA, and I think it's important to work on that as a priority. I think that sustainability is not a cost. It's an investment for the near future, and I am all the job that Paola has presented, that the Italian government is doing, is because they are working in this line in order to achieve sustainability as a key path to exiting the crisis. So I think it's important to go in this way, and I think that's important to set these specific ambitious targets from the top management in order to go in this way.
Perfect, Mónica. Thank you very much. I don't know if there are any more questions. Okay, you've been very clear, so it's perfect. And also, we'll stick to the time we scheduled for this meeting. I would like to, in terms of on behalf of the Spanish Chamber in Italy, I would like to thank again FI Group, our member that always collaborates with the Chamber, and we appreciate, we love working as a team with our members. Also, Mónica, congratulations on all the hard work and
thank you.
And that you as a firm are doing. It's impressive, and we hope other companies can also follow. I think this is an effort that we'll have to do together. So we appreciate having you sharing your time with us and participating in today's webinar. If you have any questions for the participants, please let us know. We can interview with FI Group and Iberdrola with any questions you may have. So please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
We're soon entering the Christmas period. So if I don't get a chance to speak to some of you, I wish you all, it's a bit early to say it, but it's a great day in Milan. So just thinking about Christmas, it puts me in a good spirit. So thank you. And
Thank you.
bye-bye.